Hi. In these next two lectures, we're going to take a look at selecting key influencing factors and tools for intervention. Key influencing factors are the barriers holding people back from action and from behavior change. We describe 16 factors, 4 in this lecture, factors that based on the science we'd consider the most important. Gifford in the Dragons of Inaction identifies 30. So now we're going to fully understand the barriers, both practical and structural, so that we can determine which behavioral tools to use to counter these factors for a given audience, desired behavior, and situation. Another key factor is social pressure. In-group pressures to abide by social norms can cause both increased consumption and resistance to pro-environmental change. A few definitions are needed here. There are two types of social norms: descriptive norms, the perception of what others do, and injunctive norms, what most people in a group approve of or avoid. While norms can vary across groups, some norms are broadly accepted. An interesting example of the importance of social norms is that American men perceive pro-environmental behavior as more feminine than masculine. But what if green products such as electric cars were branded at least in part for men? Brow et al. 2016 showed that men's preference for green products significantly increased following either male branding or masculine affirmation about the product. Social identity is a sense of who someone is based on their group. For example, Michael wants to spend less money, but his social identity makes him feel as if he has to buy a new truck. And social proof is when an individual looks to their peers' behavior to inform their own and conform to it. For example, Michael's friends do have fairly new trucks. One's sense of social identity can come from a variety of places: what you do, your ethnicity, where you live, and so on. Social modeling with positive social norms can really make a difference. It's more effective to highlight positive social norms rather than inadvertently highlighting negative ones. Emphasize how most people are doing the desired behavior to bring the power of social norms to your side, as in most people do X positive behavior, how about you? 3 case studies show the problem of inadvertently highlighting negative social norms. The first case study is encouraging energy conservation in homes with notices about energy use. If consumers were just shown average energy usage, those who consumed more than average reduced their use, but those consuming less increased their use. However, this boomerang effect disappeared if a happy or sad emoji, an example of an injunctive norm, was added to the bill, conveying social approval or disapproval. Second case study, encouraging people to vote. Emphasizing that voting is a common practice increased the likelihood of voting 7% more than emphasizing low voter turnout. And discouraging stealing of wood in a park. The park staff tried 2 signs. The first sign urged visitors not to steal wood and showed 3 thieves, inadvertently suggesting stealing is a social norm. The second sign showed just 1 thief, indicating stealing is not a social norm. The first message actually increased the amount of wood stolen 4 times more than the second sign. Another factor hindering pro-climate behavior is whether we feel our actions matter, preventing action. In behavioral science terms, we call these factors perceived behavioral control and response efficacy. Remember that perceived behavioral control was one of the variables that predicts intention to do a given behavior. Self-efficacy is a person's belief in his or her ability to succeed in a particular situation. Response efficacy refers to a person's beliefs as to whether the recommended action will actually make a difference. Not feeling in control or effective makes us feel bad. It has negative physical and psychological consequences, notes Weber. Norgard states that feelings of hopelessness and inefficacy related to climate change are linked with a tendency to ignore the problem or to rationalize inaction. Both are important. We all need to feel in control and effective to motivate action. I want to make 2 points here. First, climate stories are consistently negative, not good starting points for action. Impact images increase fear and anger. Inducing fear of climate impacts can backfire because people see no way out and may ignore or deny the problem. The graph shows data from Feldman and Hart 2013. The x-axis breaks out respondents by political ideology, liberals, moderates, and conservatives. The y-axis is a self-reported fear scale. The authors showed that across political ideology, fear was highest when impacts alone were presented, the darkest bars, here, here, and here. Impacts plus action, the lighter gray bars in the middle, reduced fear somewhat, while presenting images of just action reduced fear considerably, the medium gray bars on the right. The results occurred for liberals, moderates, and conservatives alike. So, if you already have an audience that is aware of climate impacts, such as the majority of Americans that converted, then you can minimize your focus on the impacts and focus on the solutions. Focus on what you're fighting for, not what you're fighting against. Second, because individuals may perceive their climate efforts to be a drop in the bucket, it needs to be emphasized that people's actions matter, that their actions are part of a broader collective. The 4 tools I'll show you next address climate despair and perceived futility, or in behavioral terms, the lack of perceived behavioral control and response efficacy. These 4 tools all give people a sense of control and a belief that their actions matter. To counter feelings of despair and futility, use the emotional appeal of stories of hope and pride. Lorenzoni et al. Stated that feelings of hope and efficacy are strongly correlated with a willingness to engage in pro-environmental behaviors and to support climate change policies. As we just explored, action-oriented images increase hope. So does framing climate change as a public health issue and not an environmental one. Another approach here is to help make people feel proud of their actions. Antonetti and McClellan showed that pride enhances feelings of effectiveness. The second cognitive bias is cognitive dissonance. The definition of cognitive dissonance is the tension a person feels whenever they hold 2 thoughts that are psychologically inconsistent. Cognitive dissonance arises when one engages in behavior that is inconsistent with one's prior behavior, identity, or world view. And here's an example. I just don't think that meat eating is a big deal for climate change.
Layla, you pride yourself on being an environmentalist. Why not cut out meat 2 days per week?
One such tool for countering cognitive dissonance is self-labeling. Here, Brianna is encouraging self-labeling by Layla as an environmentalist.